I killed Sturman with the worst build. Hello and welcome to my 7th weapon guide for Escape from Tarkov. My name is Freakatoid, and today we'll be covering the MCX 300 Blackout. This weapon isn't exactly a beginner weapon, but is very unique because it was considered to be a waste of money to use. Recently though, it's begun to be one of the favorites of the player base due to a new ammo that was recently added. As a result, let's learn more about it. First up is Ergo and Weight. This particular weapon starts out very well for a rifle, being lightweight at 2.718 kilograms and having a decent ergo of 63. It is very easy to keep the ergo high on this weapon despite the ludicrous amount of attachments most people will add. You can go further with its shorter barrel, which will slightly increase the ergo to 65 and the weight to 2.648 kilograms. Unless you're trying to reduce the weapon's barrel length for CQC corner peeking, it really doesn't change much of anything, so just skip out on it. This weapon has quite a fast fire rate of 800 RPM. While a higher fire rate is very good for increasing your chances of a kill, the weapon does tend to bounce around a little, with a base recoil of 67 vertical and 207 horizontal. I will add that even with some very high recoil reduction, the higher fire rate will make this gun a bit bouncy when full autoing at longer ranges like 75 meters or more, but you could still make it work. The MCX is actually one of the lower end assault rifles in this category, with an MOA of 2.75. The base bullet velocity is also a bit low at 534 meters per second. Keep in mind that most of the ammo in this category will increase this speed quite a bit, with CBJ rounds in particular having a bullet velocity of 725, which will bump the weapon up quite a bit. The shorter barrel of this weapon will lower the accuracy slightly more with 3.27 MOA and a bullet velocity of 509 meters per second. You really shouldn't use this weapon at extreme ranges when you can, but at close to mid-range, the lower accuracy shouldn't be hindering at all. This is kind of a hard weapon to get your hands on. You will need to reach Skier Loyalty level 3 before you can purchase this weapon, but it does appear in weapon crates and sometimes can be found on some of the more difficult scavs, including guards and raiders. The best way to get this weapon is through the flea market, where you'll typically find it much cheaper than what Skier demands of you. Yeesh. If you find an MCX off of those harder scavs, Skier does sell the somewhat reasonably priced functional piece of it, where simply transferring the parts will grant you a fully repaired weapon. This weapon is slightly limited in the customization department. This is especially true compared to the M4, where some of its shared parts come from. Regardless, it doesn't take away from the weapon's potential as you can still add just about anything you want to it. Foregrip, laser, that ridiculously long stock, sights, etc., it's all available. The longer handguard on this weapon does reduce the recoil slightly, but it's not really necessary and can be avoided to save a little money. One last thing. While this weapon does feature a buffer tube adapter for some of the best stocks in the game, it's best to be careful in the early wipe not to accidentally spend hundreds of thousands of rubles on it. The reason for this is because of Gunsmith Part 12, where everyone will be buying out this part and overpricing the hell out of it for the first month or two. It's best to deal with the stocks that are unique with the MCX if you aren't able to buy it from traders. Oh boy, what a topic of discussion we have here. This weapon has 6 different types of ammo in total. AP, BCP FMJ, M62 Tracer, VMAX, and Whisper. Yes, I can count, but I have my reasons to leave out the 6th for now. As far as most players are concerned, AP is the only decent round out of this bunch. The problem is that it has become loot only and non-craftable, so good luck with that. M62 Tracer looks like the next best thing, right? Well, that would be true if it weren't for its bullet velocity, which is a terrible 442 meters per second, along with it being tracer rounds, making it easier for your enemies to see exactly where your shots came from. Normally, I don't even consider tracer rounds to really expose your position that badly, but in combination with the slower bullet velocity, it just gives people a bigger window to narrow down your location. With all of this in mind, I recommend that you also forget about VMAX and Whisper rounds. Not only are they available only after reaching loyalty level 2 with Skier and Jaeger, but they're just underperformed in general. BCP FMJ is actually quite a good choice here, with a solid amount of damage, level 3 armor pen, and available with Skier at loyalty level 1. But what about that 6th ammo you skipped, I hear you ask? Well, here it is, CBJ rounds. This ammo is very good, but requires loyalty level 3 Skier or level 3 Workbench. I need to add that I'm going to be comparing this round to 7.62 BP from here on out, as these two rounds are incredibly close to each other stat-wise. Here, I'll even throw this image out for a second so you can see where I'm coming from. Taking your screenshot yet? 7.62 BP is considered one of, if not the best ammo you can use in a fully automatic weapon in this game. So I realize it sounds absurd to say it's the same, but hear me out. The damage on CBJ is 58, which is incredibly good and matches BP. The armor pen is 43, which still performs nearly as well as BP against high levels of armor. The same argument is also said for its armor damage, which is only slightly lower than BP. CPJ offers a lower ricochet chance than BP, and pretty much matches the bullet velocity. As far as the weapons are concerned, it becomes a battle between recoil and rate of fire, as the weapons that use the BP round are often a little more controllable due to its lower fire rate. And the very last thing we'll talk about is the price. BP is incredibly expensive, costing more to buy 120 rounds than the guns that most people will use to shoot the damn thing. CBJ is much cheaper, being around 63,000 rubles to buy from the traders in a larger amount. Now, can you forgive me a little more for comparing these two against each other? Before I started paying attention to the stats, I thought this weapon was mostly subsonic, which would have made it much harder to detect at even some of the closer distances from an enemy. But that didn't end up being the case at all. Turns out this weapon is just as loud as the M4s and AKs. I'll go ahead and show you some distances from an enemy wielding the MCX, both loud and suppressed. Let's go back a bit, to before CPJ ammo was introduced, to a time where this weapon used to have more base recoil and where you could buy AP ammo off of Peacekeeper. This weapon really had nothing going for it. Its ammo was hard to get in large numbers and was more expensive than its superior 5.56 counterparts. The weapon itself was more expensive with stats that worked against you rather than for you. The M4 and the AKM family were just better choices with easily accessible ammo. This weapon had a really bad reputation among the overall Tarkov community, pretty much getting the 3.66 treatment without the saving grace of it being affordable. As a result, nobody really used this weapon. While there are players who tried to make the MCX work, it couldn't avoid obscurity. Even now, when you talk to some players about it, they may still refuse to use it. To give you an idea of how quickly CBJ ammos really turned this weapon's reputation around, this video was actually requested from one of my previous interviewees. Because of how quickly it went from bad to meta, most people are still trying to figure this thing out. As a result, I wanted to get answers that reflected this, and here's what they had to say.
prior to the addition of CBJ ammo. I hated it. But after MCX, before the CBJ ammo, I don't think was like good at all. The recoil was like way too high, and there was no like middle. Like the M62 was terrible. The AP felt really bad, and you couldn't really get AP. It was like really rare. I think you had to craft it, but it was basically an unusable gun, in my humble opinion. After CBJ freaking slaps, and they lowered the recoil of the gun, I believe. So it's an A tier. It's an A tier gun with CBJ now. Not really for long range fighting, but mid and close, it's very good.
So prior to M62 Tracer and AP were the only thing that I ever used in it, but initially I was constantly getting the just don't use it, you know, that bullshit. Same thing with like the 366 guns. Just don't use it. It's not good. Why would you use that gun? This wipe, CBJ, I freaking love it. Like, it's such a fun gun to run for any type of CQC like combat. I mean, dude, anything close quarters, it shreds, it melts, it's disgusting. That initial recoil could come down a little bit, dude, like just a little bit, just a hair, and it would be an amazing gun. I mean, I love the shit out of it though. So much fun. Sounds disgusting. I love the way it sounds.
The MCX 300 Blackout was not a viable weapon before CBJ. CBJ makes that weapon viable and usable in today's Tarkov meta. Before that, dude, 300 AP, you just couldn't get enough rounds to run that gun. CBJ, like now that's a fun gun to run. I like running CBJ. People still won't run the MCX because of the nuances with the gun itself. It's not extremely customizable in terms of like getting a meta version in terms of what you can do with some of the other weapons. But CBJ does make the MCX more usable with today's meta.
So prior to CBJ ammo, the MCX was in a weird place. Last wipe didn't have CBJ, and you weren't able to purchase AP ammo anymore. So it kind of had the MCX in a really weird spot. This wipe, you're able to buy CBJ, so it's in between M62 and AP. So you're getting your bang for your buck by purchasing it, and it is a very great round. So me personally, MCX is great this wipe. And that's a Tony Piff answer.
Dude, I love the MCX. The MCX is super fucking fun. Before the CBJ, when you could buy the AP rounds, it was still... It was like having a VSS with a 60 rounder. The time to kill on that is so fast. It's such a beefy bullet, and the rate of fire is way faster than 7.62.
It's definitely better. I use it for the same purpose though, which is purely for close quarters combat, like factory only. For really the most part, that's about it. Anything else is long range is really questionable with it because it's a subsonic bullet. 5.56 is always going to outperform it. But if I'm going factory, MCX is kind of my go-to. The flash damage is good enough, and the speed is fast enough to be viable on close quarters like that. Labs as well could be good, but honestly, it does suffer against level 5 and 6 armor. So level 6 armor would be technically stopping those bullets. But CBJ is definitely a nice bullet. Again, it struggles when you get up to level 6 armor. And again, 5.56 does outperform it when it comes to speed of the bullet itself, how fast the bullet travels.
So in general, I think the 300 Black is unreliable at best. It's got an atrocious recoil pattern. I think the bloom is extremely like unpredictable as well. And I mean, prior to CBJ, I don't even think really AP was all that viable because you're not hitting a lot of your shots to begin with, you know what I mean? I mean, obviously with the addition of CBJ, it's more viable because you don't have to hit as many shots to be effective in terms of killing. But it's still very difficult to hit your shots outside of like 20 to 30 meters. I personally do not like the caliber at all. I don't go out of my way to use it. I think I've used an MCX once this wipe, but I also know I have homies that are pretty successful and run it all the time.
The MCX 300 Blackout is the only weapon in the game so far that uses its ammo, so newcomers may never truly explore their options with it. Let's really give it a closer look. The MCX is actually quite the looker, with a decently high ergo and lightweight handling to boot. Its accuracy is a little troubling from most of the rifles in the game, but it won't affect its close to mid-range ability in any way. The rate of fire is high, and the recoil can be a bit much if it's not controlled. The bullet velocity of this weapon may make distant tracking a little weird, but if you treat the weapon like it's a faster firing AK, you'll see good results. CBJ ends up being the only ammo I can really recommend, as most of the 5.56 rounds will outclass the others and be easier to acquire. Overall though, this thing can easily infiltrate the current meta and should not be overlooked anymore. The MCX is a weapon that attempted to have its reputation changed with its new ammo, and I believe that it was successful. Due to its limited use before, most people don't recognize it at a distance, so they could easily underestimate the power that you hold. But you know better now, and you should be able to take advantage of that. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I certainly hope I was able to teach you something new. Be sure to subscribe.